So today, a lot of the stuff that you've been looking at now comes together, and that now you're really starting to do true web application development. I think that's fair to say, because what did we start off with? We started with basic HTML, the framework, the studs and the frame and the house and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about CSS. We did a little bit of stuff with Sinatra, but then we got right into databases. So, and those are probably, the three inescapable components of a web application. Arguably, I don't know. It's you can have this discussion in any number of different ways, but typically there is that front end component, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and then that back end component, be it Sinatra, be it Rails, be it Django, or some other weird thing, right? Doesn't matter. Then you got the database, which persists the data for whatever purpose. Now, typically we're persisting data for individual users, probably one of the most common applications of the database. But the database is what keeps the data from one session to the other and make sure that it's not forgotten. Today we jump a big gap here. We bring all these things together in that we can take data entered on the front end, that client side with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, send it to the back end, which in your case is a Sinatra application, and then persist that data, save that data to the database. So we haven't done that before. We've been doing this manually. Today is the first time we bring this all together. This is, I think, where it gets really interesting. So I haven't really decided, like when I was doing prep, wasn't really sure how I should demonstrate. I'm thinking I'll probably maybe do a little bit at a time. Even now, I'm not even really sure, but let's see what I do. Time will reveal. Okay, so today's object, we are going to actually take that data. We're going to collect user input with forms. We're going to discuss attributes. What are attributes? HTML attributes. What are those?
Things that shape our CSS?
No, not really. It's like, remember how an HTML element has a tag? It has that text content, and then it has a whole bunch of different things like, say, ID equals this, or class equals this. ID and class are examples of attributes. And we're going to talk about the form tag, and we're going to talk about the method and action attribute. A lot of mysterious stuff going on here. You guys are going to find out, at least if nothing else, how to apply it. We're going to talk about once that user on that form on the front end, that user is going to press submit. There has to be something listening on the other side in Sinatra to receive that data and to do something with it. It doesn't necessarily have to go to the database. That's where it's going to go in our case, at least. And we're going to also make sure a little bit about how to ensure that this data isn't somehow corrupted. For example, one application of this, you might ask for an email address. You might want to make sure that they actually provided you a valid email address. This is a surprisingly complex problem. So we won't be doing that one, but we'll just say, for example, we're going to use a to-do application, and we're just going to make sure that someone actually entered a task, didn't leave a blank to-do.
Is that when generally people would put a CAPTCHA in their forms nowadays? So you can tell it's not a robot auto-filling forms?
That's one, yeah, sure, the CAPTCHA. I think that serves a different purpose, but that's true. I think it validates the interaction more than it does the data, though.
Yeah, because you could put down whatever email address you wanted, especially with your buddies.
Sure. Yeah. Truly, yeah. So here's a form. Here's a form. I'm not sure why we're using this individual income tax form. This is an American IRS type form, but we're all familiar with forms, right? And up until now, we've been using Tux in a way to collect this user input. We manually created users and posts and all that kind of stuff. Now we're going to make that available to the user who's actually coming and visiting your Finstagram app or whatever kind of app you're creating. So when we're creating a form just like this, and we're not going to, but we could create this income tax form. It always begins with this open form tag. And right away you should recognize the two attributes, just because I was talking about it 30 seconds ago. There's an action attribute, there's a method attribute. For practical purposes, there's really only two methods available to you as front-end developers. Get and post. We'll talk about that a bit in a minute. The action is where you're going to send this data. Where in Sinatra you define some route in actions.rb that says, okay, when I press submit, I want whatever data that you're bundling up here, I want it to be sent to that route. That's where you enter it. So you're going to see a very concrete example of this coming up. And of course, just as with all HTML, make sure that when you're writing these things, you close it off with that closing tag. So action and method, these are the two attributes that we're talking about here. The method tells us how the form will be processed. There's, I was going to say 4, but there's 5 methods. There's get, post, delete, put, and patch. None of these make any sense, right? What do any of those do? Get, I can kind of understand, but you're not necessarily getting. When you're making a get method, you're actually sending something if you're using a form. So don't concern yourself too much with the semantics of these words here, because they don't really mean what they might suggest. Not always, at least. But here's that get method. A very common one is search data. And I'm going to show you a very simple example here. If I go to Google and I'm going to search something, I don't know, I've already searched gypsies and beefaloes. What's another funny thing to search? Oh, my other favorite animal, the skink. Funny animal, not because I think it's cute or anything, I just think it has a funny name. This is that get query right up here. It doesn't say skink.query, but you see that question mark there. That's the telltale sign. There's what I did there is actually probably a post. I'm going to tell you straight up, but there are some get parameters here. I've got this GFRD. I have no idea what that is. Doesn't matter. It's kind of like the key in a hash in those key value pairs, because on the other side I find that GFERD equals CR. So it is very much a key value pair. Then we got another one. It's separated by this ampersand. Then I've got EL. I've got this whole long string of characters. And then, what's this? Q equals skink. There's my actual query, right? This was what was sent to Google. It received it. It's probably not Sinatra. I have no idea what they use at Google. But something received it on the other end, looked through its vast storages of data, and returned these results. Show me these results with the skink. And if I click on images, I might even see another. So here's my query again, the skink query. I'm looking for something that will tell me that these are filtered by images. I don't see anything offhand, but there's probably something in there. A lot of mysterious stuff there, right? We have no idea what's going on, but this is one way to pass data back to your application. There's the get, very common example, filtering, passing search data or filtering data. And you saw it right there. The data that we are sending to the server is clearly visible in the URL. Doesn't change data in the application. Now this, what it's saying is that you're going to send this data and that it's not going to make an update to the database, for example. This is a rule of thumb. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that. If you are going to do that, that's a real weird way of doing it. Don't. But there's really nothing stopping you. So Yes, it can change the data in the application. The post, on the other hand, this is typically for doing this, right? I say this doesn't, it can, but it doesn't. Let's just pretend it doesn't. When you do want to change that data, say you want to sign up a new user, you want to create a new post for your blog, you use this post method. The reason is because, well, not the reason is, but this is one of the advantages, is that it's not immediately visible to the user. You can look at it. There's nothing stopping you. You can open up Inspector on Google Chrome and see what that post data actually looks like. But it's not immediately visible in the URL itself. The action, so now this is the other side of it. Remember, we got two attributes here in this form tag. We got the method, which we were talking about. And for all practical purposes, there's only two for front-end developers: get and post. There's three others on top of that. Doesn't really happen from the client side. I'm not even sure why they exist, actually. I have no idea. So it's kind of a funny thing. Well, I say that and then I think to Rails and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a dumb thing to say. So if anyone actually listens to this, then disregard what I just said. Okay, so now the action, this is where, you saw me do this the other day, it said like, actions.rb file, I said get quotations / about, for example. We did that one time. That is that path. We define a route, we call it. This is the route to that controller action. So with these actions here, you can kind of guess what might be over in Sinatra in the actions.rb file. In the sign up one, you're probably going to have maybe two. There's going to be a get sign up, which renders that ERB document, which actually gives you the form that you're going to enter data into. And then maybe you're going to have a post sign up, which is once you've entered your email address and then you entered your password and then you entered your password again to make sure that you didn't make a mistake the first time, you press sign up and it doesn't go to get, it posts the data to the post route. So we're going to see this. Same with login. It's probably a get login, which just serves up the form, renders it to the screen, lets you enter your email and password. And the post side of that, which actually receives the username and password with which you want to authenticate. And then here's one, I think that's fairly obvious. You want to create a new post, you're on your Finstagram app. You're going to post data to the posts create. Not to confuse this. When I say post in this sense, I'm posting data. I'm not talking about the blog post. I'm talking about the HTTP verb post as opposed to get. All right. Take a sip of my coffee. Hang on. So when you're creating a form, this is going to be something defined in a get route. You're not going to post data just quite yet. I say I want to log in for the first time, or maybe I want to create a new to-do. I've got to create that actual data. So I got to display that form to the user. Once that data has been collected through that form with that method attribute, with that action attribute, I press submit, and I need a way to receive that on the Sinatra end. Now, this isn't always the way it is, but this is this is definitely the traditional method. We receive that data on the server side, and we say, well, okay, is this actually an email address? Or maybe it is an email address, but it's already been used by someone. Maybe I'm signing up a new user. This user's no good because someone already took this email address. So whatever that case may be, and you can decide what kind of constraints you want to put on this thing. You gotta act accordingly. Either you update the database and log the user in, or you say, sorry, wrong information. You enter the wrong password, or you tried to sign up with an email address that doesn't exist. That's already exists, I should say. Send that error message back to the user and give the user another chance to try again. So here's how. Now we've talked about this this form tag. We've talked about how it has these two attributes: the method, the action. Now inside that form tag, we actually need little fields to put this information in. So this is that sign up form example. And when it comes to demo time, I will do a to-do list. So this is how it goes. You have a text entry field, for example. Could be a radio button, could be a checkbox, whatever it is. Here we have a text entry field, and we have a label that applies to that. The label is purely for the user's benefit, right? What is this empty box here? I got to know what kind of data this thing's expecting me. So I apply a label. I'm looking for a username. Whoops. The input is kind of where that data is actually, collected and organized. So we got all sorts of different types of data input. This one, as you can see here, the type attribute has been assigned to text value, which renders a text box on the screen in your browser. And then you give it a username. And this one's very important. This name attribute, the value assigned to it, is what gets passed through that params hash. You guys have seen the params hash. It's going to get received by Sinatra. And when you need to know what that user actually entered in, you're going to say params. In this case, probably symbols will work. So you say params : username, and that's going to show you whatever was entered in this field. The ID here, this is, it's also very important. You remember the difference between ID and class, where ID is typically one thing on the screen, and the class can encompass many different elements on the screen. These are especially useful in testing, but also for CSS styling, that kind of stuff. It's not really going to impact the functionality or the mechanism behind passing data from the client to the server. But still, assign an ID. It's a good idea. It's just good practice. So lots of different types of fields. Here we're looking at a text field. Obviously, we've all seen these. This is nothing new. And you've all seen these ones as well. Email and password. And you can probably guess, if I took email and I wrote it here instead of in place of text, this is going to do some client-side validation. So as I said before, remember how you take the data and then you decide if it's valid. This is a real good way to save some traffic on your site, some bandwidth here. You put email in there and you put anything other than something with an @ sign and a .ca or a .com, it's going to say, sorry, this is not an email address. Give me a valid email address. So you can do that on the front end as well. So I don't want to say less traditional, because it's not like this is a new thing, but it's a way to improve the user experience when people come to your site. And of course, a password. Any guesses what the password field does special? Give me a guess.
Like bullet points.
Stars, yeah, stars or bullet points, exactly. Because you're going to sign up for an account, or you're going to sign into your account. You don't want someone looking over your shoulder and seeing whatever funny words you put in there, because I always pick passwords that secretly make me laugh. And they'd see that, and it's like, yeah, but now he knows my password. So he blocks it out with asterisks or bullets or whatever is provided by your browser. And there's a whole bunch of other different ones. Check boxes, radio buttons, all that kind of stuff. Select boxes, the drop-down menus. If you're interested, the fastest thing to do would be to do a Google search, or you can try to copy down this URL before I switch to the next slide. So why use different types? And I kind of already covered that. Here's that password. Don't want people to peek at it. Why use an email? Because I got to make sure this thing is actually an email. Let the browser do the work. Don't worry about it on the server side. So now here's where we receive this data. This is that get and that post. Now you've seen this. What's this? This is week 4. This is day 2. So you've probably seen me do this close to 6 times at least, where you've seen this get / and then I put a hello world in there, or render ERB index. We want to receive data. We don't use get anymore. We use post. And post and get can use these same routes. There's no reason why they can't. Because that method, that get or post, is negotiated between the client and the server. And so Sinatra, just the way that these things are set up, Sinatra is going to receive the appropriate one. So you could have a get sign up, which renders the sign up form, and then a post sign up that actually takes that data, determines if the email address has already been taken, makes sure that the password is long enough, makes sure that the database can save it, and then says, good job, thanks for signing up. Or, sorry, something's wrong here. Someone already used this email address. Try again. That's where this happens right here in this post method defined in actions.rb. So here's a form. Seen this a little bit already. This is kind of a point I stressed a little bit earlier. This name attribute is vitally important when you're making a form that's going to be received by a Sinatra application and probably most web frameworks. It doesn't really matter which one you're using. When you get to that post method here, you got to retrieve that data. You got to have some structured way, some sensible way to see what that user passed. That's all stored in the params hash. Now see the correspondence here. Name is email. I want to see the email on the Sinatra side. I just pass that email index. Likewise, what did this user provide as a username beyond an email? Something different. Okay, here it is. I can retrieve it, check it out, see if it's valid, see if it's, I don't know, whatever checks you're putting on. Maybe you don't want obscene usernames. Could be anything like that, right? And likewise, password. Somehow I got to take this password, retrieve it, encrypt it, and store it in a database and make it so that the next time the user provides the password, that when that same encryption method is applied, it matches the one stored in the database. This is something we strangely take for granted. Now, if you're like me, maybe I shouldn't confess this, but so many people want you to sign up for a website, and you give them your email, and I've got this old Hotmail account that I use all the time, and I basically use the same bloody password for every single one, right? There's no reason why you couldn't set up a site and make that same assumption about the users that come and visit you. There's no law that says you have to encrypt this password. So just be careful. I'm just telling you that. It's good practice, though. You don't want to know people's passwords any more than they want you to know the passwords. Just, keep your nose clean the whole bit. When this thing goes into the database, make sure that no one else can read it. No one can guess it. We use something called bcrypt. I think you're going to be doing that maybe next week. Not today, but maybe next week. So here's our params. Here's a kind of a more concrete example. This is actually very much where it all comes together. So here's our form. This is obviously very simplified. It doesn't have the actual fields, or it doesn't have labels or anything like that. But every value here is going to get assigned to this params hash, which is received by this post route inside actions.rb. This is your controller action. I can retrieve the email by indexing the params hash. I can retrieve the password by indexing the params hash. And then here's that class method. I'm going to try to create a brand new user. So again, very simple. No error checking here. But I pass it that email, I pass it that password, and if everything goes correctly, the database is online and all the rest, a new user is created, assigned to this thing, and then we decide, okay, user.save. If it returns true, user is signed up. If it returns false, something went wrong, tell the user to try again. It looks so simple when you see it on here, and it really is, but there's definitely a knack to understanding the interaction between the client and the server if you want to do this on your own without guidance. So do you trust his data? I don't know. He seems like an upstanding fellow. I guess this is kind of goes to that warning, right? You never know what people are doing with this stuff, right? You never know what Facebook's doing with this, or Instagram. That said, I think Mark Zuckerberg and I have a lot in common when it comes to that privacy and that basic level of integrity. So I typically do trust Facebook better or for worse, or Instagram. What are some other ones? That Pokemon Go, right? I never even heard of this thing.
Apparently it's only an APK, actually. You can't get it on the App Store.
Well, there's even a guy in the full-time course, he's going around the neighborhood hunting Pokemon. It's like,
It's not.
I'm not making fun of him or anything. It's like, Pokemon was when I was in high school, so I know that there's kids out there that love Pokemon, and I get that, right? It's like I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to this day.
There are more adults playing Pokemon Go right now than there are kids.
So I ain't knocking it. I'm just saying that something was going on here, and if I got the gist of all this Facebook garbage going by on my feed, is that it's collecting a lot of data, right? Do you trust Pokemon Go? I don't know.
Twitter.
I don't trust. Well, I don't use Twitter anymore. I tried that for a while. It never made sense to me.
It's kind of limited.
I don't like it.
It's like communism. That's a Simpsons reference.
That is a total. I'm a big fan of The Simpsons. In theory, communism works. Yes. There we go. Validating user input. So, okay, we're going to try some of these simple validations as well. Like I said, like emails, there is definitely I'm not sure if it's an IEEE standard, but there is a regex that will determine if an email is valid. Search Stack Overflow, you're going to get a whole bunch of different answers. We're not going to do anything that complex. In fact, I would just be inclined to trust the browser to be able to do that on the client side. But here's some very simple validations, and these are all defined in the active record model. So this should all be reviewed. The user takes on all the properties of this active record base class. And you can probably guess that what's happening here too. Got to make sure that the user, when signing up for an account, actually provides an email and a username, and we set this presence validation to true. We set it to false, and it doesn't matter. You can just put blank spaces in there. And likewise here, uniqueness. Make sure that this email hasn't been tried before, hasn't been registered before, because we can't have two users with the same email. The great thing about email is that there's only one. You can't have two people with two different emails, two of the same emails, unless they share the password, right? It just can't happen. There's only ever one. Same with URLs. Okay. So, and this is what happens, right? So now this is just a hypothetical. Suppose we get to this point, we've done this stuff. Now we're here. We've created a new user. We haven't saved this new user to the database yet. We're just waiting. We're going to call save, and it's going to call those validations that we just looked at. So right here where this hashtag is, now we're looking at this. If the user has been saved successfully, then we redirect to some other page. Maybe it's the user's profile page on his account. If not, and this is the convention, this is the standard by which we abide. If not, we re-render that same form. We don't have to necessarily, but that's what we do. So on success, you redirect, not depicted here. On failure, render the same form. And if there's any errors, because as soon as you call this guy, there's going to be an errors method that's going to fill up a hash with all the things that went wrong. And when you re-render this form, because it's an instance variable, you're going to have access to those errors. And it's going to say, sorry, this username has been taken and your passwords don't match anyway, so try again. Okay, so that's going to be you for Finstagram. Let's actually do this, and then we're doing pretty good for time too. Before I proceed, any questions? You guys never have any questions. Short bunch.
Maybe we're all sleeping.
Oh, maybe you are, and I don't blame you. Nighttime is no time for this kind of stuff.
Idea what questions we should be asking.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing too. I appreciate that difficulty. All right, let's try this out. So I made a clone of my to-do application. So you remember this from last day. Let's run it. I'm not sure if it's all installed. Let's just try running it. Hopefully I won't have these weird problems we've been having. Sinatra, there we go. Make sure it's going. Oh, it is. Wonderful. Everything, when they clone it, they mean it. They clone everything. All the installed dependencies, the whole bit. Oh, no. Oh, no. What am I going to do now? Active record, connections, adapter. Something went wrong. Maybe this is the same problem we've been having. Maybe I haven't installed my dependencies. No, it looks like it's okay. You're going to see me hemming and hawing here, trying to figure out what's going on. Let's try restarting. Owl Bowl Brawl. Code name. Oh, there it is again. Yep, code name. Owl Bull Brawl. Owl Bull Brawl. See. Try this again. Come on. No. What's the fastest and easiest way? I say this as a true programmer. You got any tips here, Nick? What do you think?
It's hard to see from back there.
It's just this configuration problem. It says active record, connections, adapter, connection management. So I have no idea what that means. Maybe I haven't created my database. No, I should have created my database.
Close, hang it, see if it's there.
We don't need these skinks anymore. All right. Let's try, let's make a new one. We'll say bundle exec, how do I do this? Rake DB drop. So I'm going to drop the database, assuming that it's there. I just don't have active record. Look at that. Why did it give me all these updated active records? All right, watch this. This is going to solve it. C9. What I discovered is that some of these new active records, because typically we've been using like 4.12 and all this stuff, a few nights ago, and this was, well, no, this is probably a few nights before this part-time cohort started, everything all of a sudden went up to active record 5. And so there's like a lot of weird dependencies here. So here's active model 4.21. This is the one I want. So what you're seeing here is just me trying to get this thing working. So I want the old stuff, and I don't want to spend too much time figuring it out. So I should be able to grab this raw file and use that wget. And I'm going to overwrite the existing one because I know this one is not the one I want. I got this active model 5, and I got it just seems like, you know, some of the kinks haven't been worked out yet. So I'm going to remove it. Remove gemfile.lock. Ooh, this is lagging. There we go. I'll say wget. Watch on the left-hand side. It's going to appear as if by magic. Here's the old one. Or well, the one with the old dependencies, I should say. So let's grab that. It almost looks like it didn't do it. Hang on.
Re-override back to 5.
There it is. That's the one. It just didn't refresh when I double clicked on it. So I'm going to bundle install, and hopefully I'll get all these old dependencies, which I know work. Usually I'm the kind of guy that likes to have the latest and greatest, but you know, when you're sitting here in front of the class and you say, well, this is embarrassing, I'm just going to go with what I know works and keep my fingers crossed. Okay, some good stuff happening here. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to stop my server because I know that one doesn't work, and I'm going to have to restart it again anyway. So hopefully this is all installing. Yep, all done. Let's create, or let's drop the existing database. Ah, wonderful. Check it out. Super hacker. Nope, create. Gotta create a brand new one. And then migrate. Good for you. Just missed a step. And this is, of course, going to read all those, or that database definition. Look how slow it is. Going very slow today. Migrate. Actually create the database. Now, we went to so much trouble the other day creating these seeds. Oh, wait, no. Oh, no, wait, hang on. Did I get the wrong one? Oh, here's our to-dos. Oh, okay, yeah, so I don't need to seed anything. Oh, thank goodness. All right, I would have just caused a big crash here. So right now we're going to have something without any to-dos. That was the consequence of wiping out that database. But that's okay because we're going to make it so that the user can come along and do that. So let's make sure that this thing is working now. Run. Hopefully no crashes. Beautiful. I come up to here. I should be able to refresh. I think it's doing it. Oh, whew. Okay. I wasn't sure there for a second. Thank goodness. All right. So let's make this new form. It looks like I've lost some of the stuff from last day. That's okay. We can whip this up really fast. So here's my index. Here's my actions.rb. First thing I need to do is actually provide the facility for my users to enter in data. So in my index.erb, I'm going to change this up a little bit. Stuff to do. Actually, I think I used an older one, but we can work with this. Let's take a look at this table here. So I don't have the urgency one. That's the one I was really looking, but we're just going to have like one item. We're going to keep this real simple. Here's index.erb. Now we got to create a form. And we need two attributes. What are they? Action and method. So we'll just call this one, we'll just call it to do. And we're going to call the method post, just like that. And I'm kind of picky about these things sometimes. When I'm doing HTML, I typically like to use the double quotes. Don't ask me why. It's just the way I've always done it.
It doesn't really impact it, does it?
Not really, no.
So the correct ones that match.
Yeah, just make sure that you use the same one when you're creating a string or creating a value to assign to an attribute. Then we need a label. And the label, and I'm always so embarrassed because I can never remember. I have to look up the simplest things. Here we go. Label for username. The username is what this ID is going to match to. So I'm going to say label for to do. Look how short my memory is. Okay, yep. And then we give it that to do. Or should we do it one word? We'll do it one word. All right. Then I create that corresponding field. So it's going to be a very simple one. Input type equals text. I'm amazed I remembered that much. And then I give it a name. So this is that. This should actually match the column in the database. Now you might have thought I was going to do this, right? That makes sense. There's no reason why we can't do it. But I want to keep this stuff sorted in my own head here. So if I look at the migration, or I could look at the schema, but I called it item. I'm going to use that. So this is an item in my list of things to do. Item, and I need one more thing, the ID, which is to do, just like that. So we're going to make sure that this thing, we're actually still missing one thing. Again, I need a button, but let's make sure that this thing works first. Come back, refresh. There we go. And I got some weird little, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I got some weird little trailing backslash, yeah, that is a backslash. We'll get rid of that. Oh, there it is. Easy to spot. All right, I need one more thing. I need a button to push to send this to Sinatra. That's just another input type. Input type equals submit. And you can call it submit. If I do it like this, it should just call it the submit button. But you can make it, you can give it any value. Just to demonstrate, I'll say assign this value attribute, say add to list. How about that? It's much more descriptive. I think, arguably it improves the user experience. Always got to have your users in mind. And there we go. Add to list. So right now, if I do this, I wonder what happens. Kaboom! Doesn't know that, did he? And it gives you this really helpful thing here. This is actually surprisingly helpful, and it's very uncharacteristic of frameworks and software in general. Like, they're right about this. This is exactly what I need. So I'm going to just copy and paste this thing. Come back to here and put it in my actions.rb. There we go. So now this time, it's still not going to do what we want, but go slow. That's all I'm saying. Go nice and slow. Come back here. I can put any junk in here I want. It's not going to change the database because I haven't wired all that up. But now it successfully posts. There's that point that's going to receive the data. Now at this point, what's the best thing to do? What's a good way that we can? You know what? Let's take a look inside the params hash. Now we were only passing one parameter. I wonder if an inspect is called for here. Let's just try it. This may or may not work. What do I got to do? Buy sunscreen. Here we are. Add to list. Now you should see if I did this right. Yep, here it is. It's very small. Hopefully you can see that, but that's a hash. I'll make it a little bigger for you. And that's what's being passed from the form. Now, just to show you, just to kind of crystallize this this concept here, I'm going to change the name. Right now, it's item is the key. I want you to like see this and appreciate what's happening here. I could call it something to do. It doesn't matter. I do this now, and I'll even open up a new one so that we can compare. Go to beach. I hate the beach, but why else would I buy sunscreen? See, that's really what I want to show you. That's the value that you assign to that name tribute in the form is what takes on the key. That becomes the key in the params hash. And this is just the params hash in the raw. Before it was item, which is the preferred one, I think. I'm gonna go back with item. But I want you to see that. This is that value that was passed through the index, or sorry, the text field input. And that's the attribute value assigned to name.
So generally we would keep them both the same though, to keep up with appearances so that it's easier for us to read our own code.
Yes, do what makes sense. The reason why I say that this should be item is simply because that is the name of the column in the database. You can call it whatever you want though, right? Yeah. But then you got to be aware of it. And then there's that, you got to have all this stuff sorted out. Okay, so we've provided that facility to enter the data. We've sort of sketched in a place to receive that data. Now let's actually create that record. And we're gonna follow that same model that you saw in the slides. So here's my new to do. I'm gonna assign it that instance variable. Oh, I don't even have a to do object. Oh, I'm not as much on the ball as I thought. When I prepared for this, I thought I cloned the example I gave you guys last day, but I clearly did not. So I'm going to use this one instead. I'm going to call this one to do. I'm going to get rid of this user table. I cloned the wrong repository. My fault. My apologies. So I've got to make this to do guy right here. Good thing I checked. Otherwise, I'd be like, huh? What's going on? As I often do. So to do equals to do.new, and then I pass it those parameter values. Now there's a shortcut way to do this, but we're making this like crystal clear here. So I've got a task. Task which is stored in, did I call it task? I called it task, right? What did I call it? Item. Yes, item. Sorry. This has got to match. So I do this. Now I've got a to-do just waiting to be saved. And now this is where like kind of that magic happens, where that validation is. We haven't written any validations yet. At this point, we could submit an empty to-do and it would create that item in the database. We're going to get to that in just a second. So I say if to-do.save. If I save it, and this is the convention here. It was actually Nick who explained to me why we do this. I had no idea until Nick explained it to me so succinctly. We always redirect. And now on success, I'm going to redirect to, well, I've only got one page here, so I'm going to redirect to index. Or the slash, the home page. In the event of a failure, now this is going to look kind of weird, I'm going to render it. It's kind of a weird thing. Don't stress too much about it. You're going to see this sort of repeated in your code. On failure, render. On success, redirect.
Render, you just mean like refresh.
Yeah, kind of.
Try again.
Yeah, try again, because this one, maybe I want you guys to understand this, but I don't want to get too complicated at the same time. This might be simple, but too complicated. It's a weird thing I'm working with here. Let's leave it like that for now. And I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that you understand what I'm doing here. Okay. So at this point now, I should be able to submit a to-do. Let's try it out. Because right now I'm at that to-do path, and I just rendered that stuff. Now it's going to bring me back to here. And I will say, buy food for skink. There we go. Add to list. It's doing something. Talking to the database. Wonderful. It's successful. It didn't crash. But where's my to-do list? Here it is. We got to make it. Oh no, I closed it. Oh, come back. Come back. To-do, come back.
At least you're fun, Dan.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you're having fun. Because nothing about this is fun. This has got to be the worst occupation I could ever have chose. Although I do actually quite enjoy it. It just makes me really boring to talk to outside of class. Okay, so let's grab that. So what do I have to do here? I need to get all these to-dos from the database. How do I do that?
You have to print the screen.
Yeah. Well, first thing I do is actually get them from the database. So that's going to happen up here in this this landing page on this index. Very simple stuff. You've seen this even today in the slides. I assign this to an instance variable so that the view itself can access the data. Without that @ sign, nothing's happening. To-dos in this case is plural because I'm going to have a whole bunch of them, hopefully. Or lists, I've got nothing to do, which is good as well. And then I'll have an empty list, right? So now when I've done this and still nothing's happening, I can come here, refresh it. Now there's just that extra step in the database. There is a variable out there somewhere in Sinatra's memory with my single to-do to go to the pet store and buy food for my pet skink. I need to actually display that now. And that's going to happen in the index. So what I've done here is actually kind of what we call a single page application. And this is very fitting of current web development trends. So let's make that up. I've got that to-dos. And I'm going to call each do. And for each to-do, look at them all one at a time. And then print them to the screen. So I think an ordered list is well, maybe. I don't know. Let's say an unordered list. I tend towards those. Well, we don't use ordered lists very often. So I'm going to use an ordered list. OL. Make sure everything is nicely indented. It's a little bit too far for my liking, but we'll work with that. And then for each item in my to-do list, all I want to do is display that item. So to-do, oops, I need that special alligator tape. I need that equal sign, right? To-do dot item, like that. All right, so I only got one in my list, but this should be sufficient to actually display all the things I've got on my list of things to do today. Oh, what happened? Something happened. Let's see if we can figure it out. This was not part of the plan. I thought that was going to work. So what went wrong? I've got an item in there. I think I see the problem. There is definitely an item, but it's not, there's nothing in, no, that's okay. Hang on. So why did that not work?
Need a space after name.
Oh, that's okay. I'm wondering if there's something in here. Did I get the wrong? No.
Make sure you save differently.
These are very good things to do. Let's try another one. Let's just see if it comes up blank. So, okay. Clean aquarium. Add to my list. So now if something's really wrong here, there's going to be just another blank. There's going to be 1 and 2, and I'm not going to have any idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Nope. I'm not sure what happened that first one. Very strange. So if I refresh, let's try that again. Still there.
Yeah, it exists. It's just not filling in.
So I did something wrong the first time. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but let's add another couple things here. Big Brother's on again tonight. Big Brother. Add to this. Hey?
Has it been a week already?
That's on like 3 times a week. So.
Oh, wow.
There's not many Big Brother fans. I realize that. I sure like it though. And I can keep doing this all day. So, there's other things that we can do here, but this is the very basics. And now there's one way that we could prevent this thing from happening. We need validations. And this was like the last set of those 3 slides. After that, I'm going to let you guys go on and try this out for yourselves. Validations, if they're not happening on the front end, say with like that email field, they're going to happen before you save it to the database, perhaps in here, maybe. But likely, and this is probably the easiest way, is just by putting certain constraints within the active record model itself. The one constraint I want is to make sure that the user actually entered in something to do. So let's try it out. Let's say task. How do we do this? Validates, I think it's plural. I'm going from memory here. That's not always the most reliable. I say item, presence, true. So this will at least make sure I actually enter something in. It is plural. Okay, wonderful. My memory did not fail me. So now this time, having placed these constraints on it, it's not going to change the existing record that for some reason is blank. And again, I have no idea why. But when I do it, it should fail. And it did. Undefined method each for nil class. That's not the failure I was expecting. Single. Oh, yeah. Of course. I actually didn't. Oh, this one's kind of. I'm just kind of cobbling together a solution now. I admit this is not exactly the best way to do it. The reason why that happened is because there's no to-dos assigned here. So I'm getting this. This isn't exactly dry code, but I'm going to make this work come hell or high water here. So now that's going to solve the problem. Watch what happens. So I come back to here. Continue. blank posted data. Now I can press this as many times as I want. It's not going to add anything. Whereas before I could just keep adding this stuff. Maybe I should take out that validation and prove it. Let's do that. Just so you believe me. So I'm going to comment this thing out. Without this validation, I can come to my web application and now just start adding empty items. Just starting up, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do this too many times because we haven't actually made a way to delete these things, right? There's the number 5. Okay, so let's put the validation back in just to prove it works. There we go. The thing is with this, when I press refresh, I didn't actually press add to list. Here we go. So now I can add this, blah, 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 blah. Click it as many times as I want. You're going to see my server's going nuts over on this side. Wasn't quite fast enough. It's going to do this, and it's just going to kind of re-render that page because this is a single-page application. I need some way to, tell the user what went wrong. User might be here expecting to press this and see 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. There's no error message. The nice thing about this is, and the nice thing about Active Record especially, is when you try to save it, if it's successful, it returns true. That's why this thing works. If it's unsuccessful for any reason, it's going to return false, and that's what's happening here. This all of a sudden is executed instead of this redirection code. When it fails, there's a hash contained inside the Active Record object that tells you exactly what went wrong. So we can use this to inform our user about what data was expected. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to put up, we'll say, if to do. This is where it gets kind of tricky because I'm talking about this to do right here. Distinct from to do's, distinct from to do's. They're different names, different values, totally different things. So if there is a to do, I can assume that something's wrong. So first thing I got to make sure is that, or first thing I have to determine is if there is a to do. If there is a to do, and that to do contains errors, then do this. I'll we only have one item, but that errors is actually an array. So you maybe have multiple validations. I'll show you the right way to do it rather than like the quick hacky way. todo.errors.each. I might need a full message on that. Well, let's try it. If it's wrong, we can always go back and fix it. Maybe error full message. I think I'm kind of taking a shot in the dark. This is where I'd be on Google querying Active Record and saying, well, how do I, where are the errors contained? So this is a guess. Let's hope my memory serves me well. So come back to here, press refresh, just make sure that it doesn't crash. I don't want to resubmit the form. Come on. This is kind of a silly way to do it, I admit. But it's good for demonstration purposes. So now when I press this, hopefully, it's going to show me that error. But it actually might crash. Let's find out. Oh no, full message. Okay. Let's just do it the short hacky way. There is, as I said, there's that errors message. And it's going to look pretty decent the way it is just because there's only going to be one. So let's take this stuff out. Just going to print out the results of that attempt to save to the database. Back, refresh. Add blank item to list. Oh, close. Should be something there. It's not. Well, let's see what's actually in there. Where's inspect? Oh, I'm not getting anything. How do you get the errors out of this thing, Nick? Thanks. Well, at least I'm not the only one who can't remember. Am I like totally off base here? This is how you do it, right? It was, right? To do messages. Oh, I got the wrong. Okay, so it was errors. To do dot errors. Maybe I just goofed up. I'll leave this inspect here. I'm just going to try it again. Oh, such a long-winded way to show you that Active Record actually does provide you a helpful error message. Okay, so here's item can't be blank. That's good. We'll say full. Is it full message or full messages? Let's try full messages because there very well could be more than one. This should give us something a little nicer to look at too. So there's that array I was trying to get. Let's clean it up just a little bit. Get back to what I was trying to do in the first place here. So we got to do dot errors dot each. Now hopefully I don't screw this one up. All right. Error. Full message. Okay, fingers crossed. Here it goes. This should look a little nicer if I did this right. Could have sworn that's what I did in the first place, but we're going to find out.
Yeah, I got it. It's full messages, and it should be an array.
Full message. Oh, full messages is the array. Oh.
This is actually Rails.
All right. Just goes to show you what can eat up your time, right? Let's go. Define errors. Active record relation. Define method errors. Okay, Nick, sorry, I need you again.
It's on Slack.
Okay, here it comes. Coming up. Of all the easy stuff to get caught up on. Where did you go? I felt it come in my pocket, but I didn't. It's not up on my computer here. Hang on.
Would it just be on to do and not to do?
All right. So this is Nick's solution here, and I have full confidence that he is correct. If to do errors dot any. This is the nice thing about Ruby. It offers these nice methods to do this kind of stuff. Move the errors count, printed movies, errors, to-dos, to do. Ah, son of a gun. There it is.
That might have been a part of the problem.
That probably was the problem. There we go. Okay, all that just to like get it out of those square brackets, right? What a waste of time. There we go. All right, so now we can't add a blank item. Thank you, Nick, for your help. That was wonderful. And now when we do this, and let's really make sure it's actually working. Go to sleep. There we go. After Big Brother's all done, or unless my wife wants to fool around or something, then we'll see what happens. All right, go to sleep. There we go. All right, any questions? No questions. All right, so this is what you're going to be doing today, except it's going to be a little bit more complex than that. A few more validations, a few more input fields. Principle's the same. I will write all this up inside the lecture summary, and it will be for you to refer to.